Felici, Nafela, Padrigot. And for you Sassenachs out there, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Or almost St. Patrick's Day. This is the
What
week.
just happened?
This is our lead up to St. Patrick's Day.
Yay!
So all this week we're gonna do Irish whiskeys. My name is Ed.
I'm Erica.
I'm Mike, the good-looking one.
Yeah, right. Well, you're 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Yeah. I got age. Yeah. I think that's all I got.
Yeah, right. So we are going to be doing a bunch of Irish whiskey reviews this week. But before we do that, we gotta talk about what is Irish whiskey.
Okay.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, what is Irish whiskey?
So
what is Ireland?
What is Ireland?
Ireland's a big rock out in the Atlantic.
Exactly.
It's green, flat,
Yeah.
no trees, lots of rocks.
Well,
Sheep, cows.
You British stole all our trees, you know.
That's true. And we made fine furniture with them. So thank you.
So why don't we pour a little Jameson Cask mates for while we're talking, hey?
All right.
Someone pointed out we're supposed to serve Erica first, but we're a feminist show. Erica gets hers last. So, Irish whiskey. Obviously, so the thing about Irish whiskey, it has to come from Ireland, right? It's whiskey from Ireland. Basic
Makes
definition.
sense. All right.
And that includes both the Republic of Ireland and the North of Ireland, which is still under British control. So back in the day, right, people in the Middle East were using distillation to make perfume. And Irish monks, the Gaelic monastic order was all over the place at this point. They were running around, spreading Catholicism, doing what Irish folk do. And they heard about distillation, and they're like, okay,
Got to get me some
we're
of
gonna
that.
take that back. But what if instead of making perfume, we put beer in it?
We start making spirits, which
Yeah.
is...
So the first thing we hear about whiskey is from 1405 in the Annals of Clan MacNeish, which is it's basically saying...
I think you said something bad.
I thought the joke, but I was like, I won't say it. This is a mature
It
shit
is
up.
not. Yeah, but
Anytime you say animal around me.
But basically, so they figured out, we take beer, we distill it, we can make whiskey out of it. And at the time, it was called Ishkaba, which is...
What does that mean?
Ishkaba is the water of life.
Water of life?
Oh.
With aquavitae.
Yeah.
Yeah, aquavita. And so there's a story, the folklore is that the Irish came up with whiskey, and then an Irish giant grabbed a cask of it and jumped across the Irish Sea to Islay and brought it to Scotland. And then the Scots started making it.
Okay, now, Scotland's making whiskeys, Ireland's making whiskeys. What's the difference between the two primarily? Is it the amount of peat that they use?
Yeah, a big part of it is.
Okay.
The Irish don't really use peat, or they did in the past. Like, back in the day, everybody was using peat because it was the only way you could dry your barley, right?
Sure.
But when Ireland, the Irish style developed and they started making unpeated, triple distilled whiskeys. So instead of distilling them twice, they would distill them 3 times, get a lighter spirit.
Ooh.
Yeah.
As long as we're talking about stills, you're triple distilling in a column still? Or
Well,
a pot still? Or a...
Tradition is in...
What's a coffee still?
So, okay, yeah.
There we go.
So,
Asking the important question.
Yeah.
So Aeneas Coffey was an Irish guy, and there had been things called column stills already, right?
Well, they had pot stills, right?
Well, there's pot stills first. Pot
Okay,
stills is the original way everyone made it. It's, so when the Irish first brought it over, it's literally just a pot with a swan neck and an arm to collect the distillate, right?
Right.
But then they figured if you stack a bunch of pots on top of each other, you can basically run it through and get a really high distillate very quickly. So Aeneas Coffey created one of these column stills that was really, really good. Like, he came up with a really good system. And the Irish hated it.
Why do they hate efficiency?
Oh, they despise it because they said it wasn't. They said it wasn't real. They said it wasn't real whiskey.
Well, didn't it change the taste subtly?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was much lighter. It was way lighter. It was you could distill it up to 94% very easily.
More alcohol and less taste. Okay,
yeah,
sure.
A lot more alcohol, a lot less grain taste. Which is funny because now Irish whiskey is known for being so much lighter than Scotch whiskey.
Right.
Yeah. But so basically the Scots were like, yeah, let's use that, and we're gonna start making blends. We're gonna make a bunch of grain whiskey, and people fell in love with blended whiskey, and the Irish kind of got left behind.
Right.
You know.
Rats.
So between that, like the famine happened, which sucked,
Oh, yeah.
and then
Heard it was
many
real bad.
millions?
So many.
and so that sucked, and then the Scot, that
I feel
upset
like
everything.
that sucked is
Well,
a
then-
great summary. of
Right,
it,
I know.
actually.
Irish history is basically
It was bad.
everything sucked.
Yeah.
Bad things kept
It got
happening.
better, and then another bad thing happened.
Yeah, right.
And then we had Prohibition, which hurt them yet again.
Right.
No.
So Prohibition, the Irish Civil War.
Oh,
'cause
yeah, right.
The
Pretty
the Irish had a revolution, won their independence in 1922.
Yay.
But the British started a trade war. Or,
Ooh.
well, I'm sure the British would say the Irish started the trade war, but,
We know who's.
yeah,
This is an unbiased show.
right.
Yeah, the Irish were taking it in the shorts every which way that
Yeah.
you could think.
Yeah, so basically, no one was buying Irish whiskey. There was no market for it because they couldn't sell it anywhere. So it went from 30 distilleries. There were 30 distilleries in Ireland in 1890.
Which is amazing.
And then by 1970 or 1960, there were 2.
That is not many.
And that was Bushmills in the north of Ireland and Middleton in the Free
Which
State.
is Jameson.
Jameson.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, Middleton bought up all the little guys, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why Middleton makes so many different brands. They make Redbreast, they make Jameson, they make Green Spot, they make just about everything. So the rules with Irish whiskey:
Yeah.
you have to distill it in Ireland,
Okay.
you have to age it in Ireland,
Yeah.
Okay.
but you don't have to bottle it in Ireland.
Ah.
So you can take it from Ireland, bottle it somewhere
There's
else, and
one-
sell it as Irish whiskey.
And there's one more rule. You can drink it anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, Irish whiskey, so let's talk about the different styles, right?
Okay, sure.
Okay, so let's start out with
These.
the original.
All right. Guess
The
we're
ori-
starting with the. this
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. So the original, before anything else, before anything in Ireland or in Scotland, there was
When
single
the
malt.
gases coalesced and started to cool.
And on the third day, God made whiskey, and He
There
saw
we
it was
go.
good.
Yeah, right.
Then you
But
took some breaks.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they made malt whiskey. And before, back in the 1400s, when the Irish came up with this stuff, it was unaged. They didn't put it in a cask, and they added herbs and stuff to it. At that point, it was still Ishkaba. It wasn't really whiskey yet, but it was basically the whiskey of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And so that was how they did it up until like 1785, when those dang English decided to put a tax on malted barley.
What? Oh, okay. I was just going to say, you said malt. I was wondering, what grain were they malting?
Malted barley, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So the English put a tax on malted barley.
Right.
Right. This is all malted barley done in a pot still, right? So then the Irish are like, well, if you're going to tax malted barley, we're going to use unmalted barley.
There you
You're going
go.
to save
Yeah.
a bunch of money. So that's why they came up with single pot still, or just pot still Irish whiskey. So this is a mixture of malted and unmalted barley. But the truth is, you can add a little bit of oats if you want to. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about the fact that you can add 5% oats. But
a little bit.
you can, technically.
Oh.
I think a lot of the brands don't, but I know this one for sure did. But this one also is fun because Drunken Sailor, Irish whiskey, we did one about it. And
somewhere.
this one is fun because it's not labeled as pot still, it's labeled as Irish whiskey.
Yeah.
And it's also labeled as Lucky Blend, so it's super confusing. You would think this is a blended Irish whiskey, and it's not.
But
Technically, Irish whiskey, as long as it's Irish whiskey, you don't have to tell anybody what kind it is. You can just label it as Irish whiskey.
Nice.
But 9 times out of 10, if it's labeled just Irish whiskey, it's a blend. So, then when the Irish finally adopted the column still, they made single grain whiskey.
Yeah.
So they were making out of wheat, corn, whatever, and mixing that with malted barley, and then distilling it in a column still.
Sure.
Making a really light, accessible, and cheap spirit, right? And then if you mix pot still with single malt, or pot still with grain, or grain with single malt, you get blended whiskey. Yeah. So a blended Irish whiskey, unlike Scotch, doesn't have to have any grain in it, any grain whiskey in it. It can just be pot still and single malt. So all of these have to be aged 3 years in wood, not oak. I mean, they all use oak pretty much, but some people are starting to use other kinds of wood too.
What other kinds of wood would you use?
So Bushmills just used acacia. Acacia? I don't know how you say it.
Acacia.
Acacia? Yeah, yeah. It's supposed to make it very spicy, and I was like, man, they got to get some of that over here. But yeah.
Okay, well that's crazy.
Sounds interesting.
So different. The main thing is that the Irish are, pot still is the very quintessential Irish style, right? Triple distilled, unmalted barley, which makes it a little spicier, a little more creamy and spicy.
Sure.
And then, their grain whiskey is usually maize or corn. And it's made very similar to a bourbon, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But it tastes completely different.
True.
Very
So you kind of it is very much its own style. It's not like bourbon, it's not like scotch, but I think the problem is that it's become very associated with just light triple distilled style, and that's because the whiskey market just collapsed and everyone was doing the same thing just to get by. Now that there's this boom, there's a bunch of different Irish companies, little guys who are trying all sorts of weird stuff. So, like, they're peating their malt, they're doing double distillation rather than triple.
Well, how many distilleries are there now in Ireland that are actually not just producing but selling?
Jeez.
Because there's got to be a handful that are still storing to be sold.
Yeah, well, yeah, because you got to wait at least 3 years.
3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I'd probably say...
There's a boom going on, and I think they've swelled the ranks to 18, 20...
Oh, no, more than that.
More than that? Okay.
There's probably around 35 or so,
distilleries being
either
built.
open or being built.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, we're in a boom.
Yeah.
That is more than 2.
Yeah, it is the fastest growing. It's the fastest growing spirit.
Sure.
But of those, only 6 to 10 are probably actually making producing their own stuff to sell right now. Because Teeling just came out with their first whiskey that isn't, sourced from a different place.
Right.
Obviously the big two
in Dublin.
Yep, Dublin.
Okay, cool.
Dublin Liberty's just opened, but they're sourcing until they get some stuff. Same with Connacht. Connacht is fun. I like, because Connacht people...
It's fun to say.
Yeah, well, Connacht is like the wildlands. It was when Cromwell invaded, all the Gaelic folk got pushed into Connacht. And so it's one of the last real Gaeltacht areas, like where they speak Gaelic.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun area.
If you speak Gaelic.
Right.
If you don't, you're just going to get swindled and you're going to...
But yeah, so there's a bunch of people who are producing sourced stuff, but their own stock hasn't come out yet.
Right.
Yep. Right. So, but yeah, we've got Jameson, a couple of Jamesons here, and we poured out a little. Why don't we do a quick review of the Caskmate Stout? So, this is Jameson blended whiskey, makes of pot still and grain whiskey. They took barrels from Jameson. They gave it to a stout, someone who's making Irish stout, and then they aged their stout in those barrels, gave them back, and put the Jameson whiskey in it.
That's stouty.
It is. I think it's still very.
It's still pretty light.
It's still Jameson-esque.
It's still very Jameson. Like, it's still Jameson, light, citrusy, kind of vanilla butter.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Got a hint of the beer stouty kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Not as much as I would have thought.
No.
And me being a stout beer drinker.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just a touch of that kind of coffee, that dark coffee note.
But it's still coffee with like cream. It's not just like pure coffee bean.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
It's a couple we've had.
I don't really get any kind of bitter hoppiness though.
No, I don't either.
It's mostly just like that kind of the citrusy grapefruit kind of thing.
Because I'm not a hoppy kind of guy.
Yeah.
I've heard that a lot.
In fact, I'm usually very unhoppy.
We're dumb.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's late. I'm tired.
Do we want to pour a little bit of the original Jameson?
I would
compare?
love to.
Let's compare. As we know, I can't be trusted to pour things and then compare. So.
I know. Someone was busting our balls about doing
messing up the head-to-head,
and then doing March Madness.
You got a couple.
Okay. Well, we can just do one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Everybody's watching.
All right,
me.
we're watching.
Hey, we can't.
I'm keeping an eye on it.
screw up.
What do you think of the comparison?
Well, you know what I thought was original Bushmills, not
The Jameson?
Jamesons. I smell this and I'm like, huh, you know, well, it's got Jameson-esque. But then I smell the original Jameson.
Okay.
We still haven't messed it up.
And
Yeah, I know, right? I'm keeping an eye on this.
You are going to be like, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's flat.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
so flat.
There's nothing there.
Oh, it's so incredibly flat. Yeah.
Yeah, compared to the
To the stout.
stout.
Yeah.
Yeah. The stout has just got so much more on the nose right now.
Mm-hmm.
The original Jameson does have all the things we talked about, but just
But
not
coming to
as
it off of
much.
this.
Oh, so
right?
little. Yeah. It's got so. It's so incredibly flat. Like this ratchets up the vanilla. It ratchets up the creaminess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
a little dark flavor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I will say the original Jameson slightly nuttier though. You kind of it got a slightly nutty note.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of nut?
I don't know, almond maybe.
Different nuts have different tastes.
No, it's true. It's true. You're right.
That's.
Oh yeah.
I definitely enjoy the stout cask more.
Yeah, by far. Although Jameson's fine. I think unfortunately people just associate Jameson with doing shots.
Oh,
You know, and it's
Okay.
like that's not really fair. I think
It's a
Jameson,
good sipping whiskey.
right? It's
Yeah.
it's perfectly fine. It's a solid whiskey. Yeah. So
What's the alcohol volume?
good question.
40%.
I think it's 40 on both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, which is minimum. You know, if you take 40,
Yep,
if you
40.
take all your stuff down to 40%, you can sell more bottles.
Right.
So there you go.
Ooh, this
You know,
sounds-
I'm gonna say I'm going with the original Jameson.
No!
This one.
Really?
You are crazy.
This is a big bold flavor, but I just like the simplicity.
Okay.
I respect that.
Okay. I mean that's your choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we're gonna finish this up. This has been What is Irish Whiskey? What makes it different?
And this is an Irish sweater for Whiskey Straight Ale. Hey, is this looking better for you? Let me know. Thank you.
Oh man, yeah, he busted your balls a little bit.
A little bit. And if you want to see my jammies, just let me know that too.
Yeah, right. But we're gonna be back. We're gonna be doing Irish whiskey all this week. I'm gonna see if we can't do a video every day. Maybe.
Oof.
We're gonna find out. You're gonna find out.
I'm gonna miss a lot of work.
I know.
Right.
And but until then,
Ah, hey,
sláinte mhath.
what he said.
Exactly that.